You are now listening to the Project Life podcast, where we take project management concepts and apply them to your everyday life. Broadcasting from the Lone Star State in Austin, Texas, help me welcome your host, Mr. George Lopez.
Hey, what is going on, guys? It is George Lopez. I am back with you guys once again. We are on episode number 4 of the Project Life podcast. I thank you guys for coming back. It is another great day, another great week of hopefully what I feel is some good information and part of some of the heart and soul of what's going to be going on for the next couple of weeks. And like always, guys, we go ahead and recap last episode. So last week we talked about, setting our foundations and setting our baselines. And that one revolved kind of the idea of creating a project management plan. And if you don't remember, that's just kind of the ultimate folder that has every set of baselines that you're going to have, and it outlines, your scope, outlines schedules, quality management, team management, all that other fun stuff, right? So it's all project management plan is kind of all that encompassed into one, and is kind of the book or the playbook, should I say, that you build to run a project. And then we jumped into understanding scope management and really understanding what a project is in our life and what that really consists of, and understanding all the requirements and truly defining what we want our project to be within our life. And just like on the professional side of things, that's just what we use to really outline what the what statement of the project is. So if we're going to apply that to our day-to-day lives, it's really just creating what that what statement is that we have in our life, and what is our project going to be. I want to lose 20 pounds and I want to jump on this diet and outline a time frame of 6 months, and it's going to be exercising 3 times a week and so on and so forth. So it truly breaks down what the project within our life is. Last week I used weight loss and going back to school as just some of the easier projects, or I shouldn't even say easier, but some of the more relatable projects that you can see how you can take that what statement and what you need to create that what statement, and understanding, hey, if I want to go back to get my bachelor's or master's, or even if you need to go back to get your GED, you understand what the requirements are, what classes you have to take, what kind of time commitment it's going to be, and so on and so forth. And you write out all those details, you lay them out, and you understand, and you bounce it off that why statement that we talked about during week 1, as we talk about, doing business cases and, identifying stakeholders. Last week we talked about, okay, now that you have your why statement, let's talk about our what statement on what the project is really going to consist of. And now we start to get into the finer things on how. But this week's episode is all about time, guys. One of the most precious and most valuable things that we have on this earth that we don't have enough of is time and scheduling. And as we look at things over the next couple weeks, and as we look at things tonight, it kind of gets broken down into, just like we talked about last week, you have your scope management plan, which is the ultimate plan. Then you got a couple subsections within the plan, right? So if we talk about schedule, we run that same thing. The first thing is the schedule management plan, which is just the overall plan that kind of encompasses these next few items, which is defining activities, sequencing those activities, estimating the time and duration of those activities, and then ultimately building the schedule, right? And those things make up your project management plan. And again, remember, I just want to emphasize this, guys, that everything that we talk about, and especially as we talk about these plans, that episode last week was called Set Your Foundation, or Set Your Baseline, should I say, and it created the foundation that, that base of your project that it's going to be. So all these plans, right, they are all just baselines. Throughout the course, you're going to be able to modify those things, and you're going to be able to change them as you figure stuff out. So again, as we talk about this is not the final word on this is how it has to be. I have to be so rigid that I can't move away from what we talked about, or I found out a new discovery on a requirement and now it's going to take more time than I originally anticipated. And it's all a cycle, guys. It's really all a cycle that you go back, you review and bounce things off. Okay, now that I found out that this class for my master's is going to take me, 10 weeks instead of all the other classes that are 8 weeks because it's a special course, does it derail me? Does it keep me on track? How can I make the time up? So on and so forth. And you can modify those things, guys. So throughout this whole thing, don't make these plans and don't think about this so rigid. I want to open the point again of the show is to help you, give you just some small nuggets to kind of take of what stuff that you're already doing. A lot of these things that we're talking about today about schedule management, you already do them, but they're so common in their one-word sentences to define their activity, right? Even just getting your kids ready for school in the morning. If you looked at as a project, you guys probably backwards plan a schedule, right? Knowing that I have to be out the house by 7:15 because it's a 15-minute drive there, right? It takes me, once we get there, the line is so long because, whatever restrictions due to COVID and stuff like that, all these little things that you guys are already doing are already ways that successful project managers they hone in on these things when it's time to hone in on them. Okay. So like I said, this week we talk about schedules and diving into schedules. And that first item, again, is to plan a schedule management. And again, that's just kind of the overall chapter within the book, right? The book is the project management plan. And then we start breaking it up into chapters. So scheduling, that's the chapter. And then we talk about defining activities as kind of being that first subsection. So with last week, you learned how to get your requirements, right, for your what statement. Okay, and I'm going to use weight loss and going back to school as kind of my continuous little basis on and examples on using to kind of help explain some of these activities going on. So last week we talked about, going back to school, defining that what statement, understanding what the requirements are. I got to go back to school. I need 36 credit hours to get my master's. That is the requirement, right? Now, kind of take that one step further, and we're defining the activities within that requirement, okay? So of those 36 hours, okay, now I know that half of those have to be a core set of classes, right? And in some programs, there's necessarily a sequence, which is the next, subsection, which is to sequence the activities. Okay. A lot of times within that requirement, they will tell you that these classes are 8, 12, 16 weeks, right? So that's your estimated time and duration. And then you build that schedule. So it kind of all lines up together, right? Going to school is kind of easy because they kind of build the plan for you, right? But as an adult, and say you're going for a higher education, now you have to factor in things like work, family time, right? Those are the two biggest external factors that you have to consider and worry about on a day-to-day basis that you may have not been thinking about, especially if you were an undergrad and back in your younger days. Those were items that you didn't necessarily have to worry about as much, or at least take into account as much as you would when it's time to get that post-secondary education degree. Okay, so now you do have to take other things into account now, with family and everything else being an additional priority for that. Now you have to think of what's going to be the added requirements, what's going to be the added time, how many days a week or is school going to be a factor, and can I do my school at nighttime? How's it going to impact my job? Can I do this on the weekends and things of that sort? So as we go through it all, this is one of the things in which you try to do is to define that activity. So when we talk about defining an activity, it's really deep diving further into the requirement. So as we talked last week about, defining what the requirements are, now you have that requirement, you have it defined, but now you start to break it down into smaller chunks. And now you start to look at what the time requirement is in order to complete that task, right? And you talk about breaking the project down into multiple different tasks, okay, and just into smaller bite-sized chunks. And now we're talking about what is going to be the time frame, or how much work, how many people is it going to take in order to complete that particular task. So when we look at defining activities, we're looking and documenting the required action and the required time that goes into that particular task or that activity in order to move forward to a next activity or to push along to the schedule. So going back to school, okay, that's where you start to break it down. This class is 8 weeks in the syllabus, or, reviewing the class, the professor's estimates about 3 hours worth of work. Things are due on Wednesdays and Sundays, and so on and so forth. So you start to break it down to know what these activities are consisting of, what the time frame is going to be, and then now that you know kind of what is the requirement for time, then you can start to sequence and put these things in order, right? And again, with school, they tend to outline everything for you, right? Hey, you need to take these classes. This is a prerequisite for this class. But anything else on a day-to-day basis, there may not be a clear definition that this has to go before that, or there's a smorgasbord of, ideas and things that you can do, not a clear defined path on how you want to do it, just like getting your kids ready for school, as I mentioned earlier. There's multiple activities that you have to do, from waking them up, getting them dressed, getting breakfast, packing books, getting out to the car, driving to school. Some of them, one comes right after the other. But again, it's, do you have them eat breakfast in their pajamas first, or do you get them dressed and eat breakfast and then you leave? Those, as you define those activities and you kind of look at what your time frame is on the requirement for getting your kid to school by a particular time, you can then sequence them however you want to. But it just has to be done, right? You have to be able to do that process. It's not, oh yeah, this is too easy, just skip that step. It's a step that just has to, as you break it down, it will then, for bigger projects in your life, it will help define everything. It'll help keep you on schedule, and it may even help open up your eyes, because now you know the requirements, the activities in which it takes to complete that task. And it may be something that you'd never thought of in its entirety, because you overlooked it and you didn't do your research, you didn't plan, you didn't start to break things down, right? So like, I would almost use the losing weight example that we've talked about multiple times as that perfect activity, to where, oh crap, there's so many activities that goes into how we do this, right? I've been able to define all these different activities, from, the working out to the eating healthy. Then we talk about supplements, what kind of workouts, what kind of food, when do we prep food, things of that sort. And as you have all these things written down, right, then you can start to break down, what needs to go where and what kind of time frame that's going to take, right? And as you team that up with, estimating the duration of that, and you can kind of bounce those two back and forth, right? So for losing weight, if your diet and preparation of meals is such a critical aspect of it, right? You may say, hey, I need to do this on Sunday, and commit to that being on Sunday, because maybe that is your day that there are less activities in your day-to-day life that gives you a 2-hour time frame to cook and prep the food that is necessary for the week to maintain your calories, or whatever the case may be, on whatever diet that you're doing. Maybe that's the day, but you sequence that maybe as the first thing to start your week. Do you start your week on Sunday, or do you start it on Monday, right? So that could either be the first thing that you start your week on, or the last thing. But again, you now have defined all those activities for your weight loss, right? And your exercise and your dieting, it's all clumped into one. You've defined those activities. You understand the requirements, right? So on this diet, I have to consume X amount of calories, which now, as I break that down on defining the activity on what it is, okay, so eating X amount of calories is equal to I have to have this much protein, this much carbs, and so on and so forth. Holy crap. I have to go to the store and go buy all this stuff. When's that going to happen? I'm just going to skip that day. Crap, now I don't have the food to make. You see where this is going? The more that you start to break down what that and define that activity, you can then sequence those events, right? And then you associate a time with it. And then you can create your schedule. You can create schedules upon schedules. But again, I don't want to overcomplicate this for everybody. I want you to think about it, because once you start to put, as I've said multiple times, right, guys, is putting pen to paper, you can now see that there are probably going to be things that you either forget or are so minute or so, I'm trying to think of the words to kind of put it together, but it's almost common sense, but it's so easy to forget as well. And then when you forget, it can ultimately derail how you go about executing the project, right? And I know for myself, as I've gone up and down on weight loss and things of that sort and trying to stay right and things of that, it is something that, I know I got to eat right. Yep. I got to maintain X amount of calories. I got an app and all this other stuff. And I plan all these things for my life. And then I go into the fridge or I talk to my wife. I'm like, hey, we need a meal prep. Or, hey, what's my Monday meal? Or, hey, crap, I opened the fridge because I was going to start meal prepping and there's nothing in there. Nothing to help push us along, nothing that we set forth in there, and it's 8:00 at night and now I got to run to the grocery store, right? It can derail a whole plan. But understanding that at those times when I didn't look at a lot of these things as projects or different activities to put something on the schedule, that hey, Sunday mornings, go to the grocery store. That's just part of our routine, so that when it is coming time to do meal prepping and things of that sort, I have what I need. And then even that, right? You go to the store, you didn't create a list, you don't know what you need. So if you could see where I'm going with all this, as you start to break these things down into smaller and smaller subsections, it may seem like a lot. Oh my God, I got to write so much down. I'm going to have, a 1,000-page book just to lose weight. And that's not the goal, for you to have so much stuff that you overwhelm yourself. But it is to going through the process that after a while, things of this sort just become second nature to yourselves, right? That if you start to build a schedule and Sundays is your day, then things just start to become clockwork after a while. And then you start to make those better choices. Because ultimately, this is what the show is about, is to find these nuggets, find these tools and techniques to use. And a lot of this is just sitting down and slowing down. That's why with the planning, process group, it's the biggest one for project managers. There's so much involved into it because of all the details. And then we start to break down the details, right? Like the development of a schedule. And then something pops up to where we have to go back and then maybe modify our scope a little bit because we've defined some of these activities and we've created the schedule. And maybe we need to go change our why statement and say, hey, 6 months after looking at it all, it's not realistic. Let's update this. Let's be more realistic. So when I refer back to this why schedule, when I hit a wall, I can at least say, I was realistic about it, and 6 months turned into 12 months, but it wasn't because we forgot or we derailed ourselves. Nope, we went and updated it because we were realistic with what was to come and what was required for the project. And so every time I refer back to that why statement to get that motivation, if I've hit a wall, I understand that, hey, I am looking at this on a regular basis, and I know I'm in day X of 12 months, then we can keep pushing ourselves forward. So again, don't get so rigid on the fact that, this is the plan, this is what I have to do. It doesn't always work out that way, guys. Now, when we're dealing with like construction projects and building, new software programs and things of that sort, project management has gone such a long way that it's not as rigid. It's becoming more and more fluid and things of that sort. When you talk about, the idea of being agile and looking, refreshing, refining on a consistent basis, multiple times over and over and over again until you get it right. That's the same thing way with life. And that's what we're here for. This is why I'm trying to just pass on some knowledge that, hey, not trying to completely change your life, but I'm sure on some of those bigger things that you want to help accomplish yourself, whether it's, again, losing weight, whether it's going back to school, whether it's helping your kids become a better soccer player or baseball player. You can define those things, you can set them as projects, and you can see everything that it takes to make sure that that project is successful. And who knows what it may be. Again, there's a variety of things that within your life that you can break down, and you can make a project. And just taking these steps here, you can go ahead and try to make them things successful. That's my ultimate goal for you guys. That is the ultimate goal, is to make things successful. And scheduling, again, I'm not trying to say that you have to have a rigid schedule and planner and live by it. And at 6:52 p.m., I have to be eating my meal. No, that is not where I'm trying to get with it. This is to get you to sit down, understand how to schedule everything to a point that you can generalize it and understand, again, what the requirements are. You can define what you have to do within that requirement, right? And define what it's going to take. Then you line it out. I got to do A, B, and C. And then I'm going to jump to E. And then I'm going to come back to D. Right? You've lined it out. You've estimated and sequenced things. Then you start to look at time frames, right? This takes an hour. This takes 3 days. This takes 5 weeks. And then you can put it on the schedule. So at least you can time block yourself in a generalized sense to say, hey, Mondays and Wednesdays from this time to this time, this is the requirement that I'm giving myself to go back to school. Okay. And on Mondays, that's when I do all my reading, right? Not saying that it has to be Monday at 7 a.m. or Monday at 7 p.m. I just want you to think about, hey, I know that the homework that is coming every week requires 2 hours of reading. Best time within my life is Monday at X time. And I'm just going to put that down as my reading time for my homework because I know something's due on Wednesday. And there's going to be about 2 hours worth of work that I have to do on Wednesday between writing a post, interacting with other students, doing a Zoom meeting, right? Because of the whole COVID stuff. And then on Saturday, I make sure I tidy everything up for what's due because the professor checks things on Sundays. That's ultimately what we're trying to get at on this particular phase, right? And understanding that schedules are a great way to, again, bring everybody in, at least within your own mind. Bring them all in and see that now that you have your requirements on what you're trying to do, you understand what it takes to get that done. You understand when you have to do them, and you understand the time. Now I'm going to tell you, bring in your stakeholders, because in life, it's probably most of the time, it's going to be our family. And you use that to build your schedule, right? You can't do any of this stuff without thinking about the people that are involved that are going to be impacted by the project. And that's why I said, in the first episode, that when you set that foundation, that is truly that foundation, the people that are involved and the people that are impacted. Just because you're going back to school for yourself, you have to fully realize that there are way more people involved in that particular project that ultimately is going to help benefit you, maybe in your own financial situations and maybe in the ways in which you promote within your own career field and so on and so forth. But so many people are going to be impacted by that. And I continuously say that, and I use myself as the example to where getting my master's, again, on paper was a 2-year requirement or required 2 years of my life. But in reality, being real with myself, defining the activities and setting out what the requirements are and understanding what my schedules were, I knew it was actually going to be like more like 3.5, right? Because again, as I've mentioned before, I'm still in the National Guard, right? So there's that requirement. There's my family requirement. Okay, there's my work requirement. So yes, if I would have stuck to the plan that the school gave me to push forward to finish my MBA, yeah, that would have been an easy 2-year plan if I had nothing else going on in my life. But sitting and going through this process, scheduling my master's was probably one of the most beneficial things I could have done, because I understood with each requirement what needed to happen. I had to sequence them because the classes went within their own particular sequence. And if something got out of sequence, I may had a few times I had to, look and research that, hey, I couldn't take this class this particular time frame, but it won't be offered again until the same time frame next year. So that all had to go into it. And these are the things that I'm telling you that you have to do with the projects that you set forward, that you keep running into walls in, that you feel that you need to push yourself and you want to be successful in. These are the activities that you have to do for yourself to ensure that this project goes off. And we'll get into monitoring, controlling how things, unexpected things may try to throw kinks in how you could recover the project to be successful and on time and so on and so forth. But for this particular episode, guys, planning is huge, guys, because it's going to impact the things that we've already talked about. It's going to impact what your what statement is. It is going to impact your why statement. And in those aspects, you got to be able to be ready and understand what's to come so you can plan it out right. So when you sit there and look at it, you can look at it correctly and be realistic with yourself. All right, guys, that's all I got for this week. This was the Project Life podcast. Went ahead and covered schedule management. Okay, again, kind of gets broken down into plan schedule management, defining activities. We sequence those. We talk time frames, and then we develop a schedule, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time.
That's a wrap for this week's episode of the Project Life podcast. Thank you again for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, please be sure to subscribe, like, share with your friends and family. Till next time.